What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel, and today is D-Day on the White Notch project. You can see it's finally off the lift. It's sitting on all 4 tires. They're all aired up. Brakes are bled. The suspension is pretty much wrapped up. We have to double check the upper control arm lengths to make sure that nothing's going to bind. The jam nuts were loose when I got here. They were supposed to be completed, but we got to double check that before it drives. Anyway, you see Dan is laying in there. We'll show you a close-up of that. But it is wiring day on the Notch. We have a lot of wiring to do on cars that are around here, so this is just going to start the trend. But the car's exploded. We got the seats out of it. Dan's laying in there taking a nap, per usual.
Yeah, right.
What are you doing in there, Dan?
Trying to get at the hole for the firewall plug. Well, for the computer plugs. And it's all the way back up behind the heater box.
Yeah, nice and convenient. All right, so we did 2 things. Last night, we went through the factory harness and took out what we needed for AC and oil pressure and fuel temp gauges, or oil pressure and coolant temp gauges. So this is what's left. It's a kind of a mess because we just kind of pushed off to the side here. But that's all that's going to be used for AC and gauges. This is what is no longer going to be used, which is everything else from O2 sensors, PCM plugs, everything, accessory grounds, stuff like that. So that's that. When we did the Holley on the Lightning, we're like, man, we should really modify this harness. It would have been nicer. We would have liked to put like a firewall bulkhead on it. So those might be future changes. But on this one, we're not going to do a firewall bulkhead, but we did want to kind of simplify some of the wiring. For example, like there's a knock sensor plug in the Holley harness that this is not going to use. So we depinned and removed that. We moved some of the wiring that they give you to put them in a more convenient location for us to hook up under the dash. So we kind of redid some of this. Normally there's a lot more plugs coming out in this area, but we wanted to be able to put a little bit more into the car to hide all this stuff so it wasn't hanging out in the fender. This car is not really going to use a lot of auxiliary inputs and outputs, so we opted to put that underneath the dash. So if it does need anything like an electric fan in the future, it'll be easier to mess with underneath the dashboard than just chilling and hanging out in the engine bay for no reason. So we pulled that back to there. We moved the loose wires that usually come out in this area to where they should go. So the fuel pump power wire is here. The points wire, since we're running the MSD harness into the underneath the dash, is here. This is actually kind of in the same spot, but this is the 12-volt ignition lead to power, to tell it to turn on. Obviously, this stuff normally goes under the dash, so that's no different. We did leave the power tap out here in case we do put any kind of auxiliary sensors. If we need a 5-volt tap or something, that's going to be hanging out in the fender. And then moved the 12-volt and ground source for the ECM to run with the harness, and then also changed the injector and distributor harnesses along with the O2 sensor to all run together. Normally these like branch off into like different area codes, but they're all going to sit right behind the intake. These two plug in right next to each other, and then the O2 sensor is going to fall behind the engine also. So it kind of just made more sense. And then these will get loomed all the way up to the battery. So I just kind of simplified and cleaned up the Holley harness so it fits a little bit better. We could spend even more time on it, but time does not allow for that on this build. We're kind of tapped out on the time, and this is going to look fantastic, so it's not like we're shortcutting. But when you guys see us wire up the Notch, my Notch, you'll see us start with a completely unterminated harness and start from scratch, which is kind of the best option when the budget allows. All right, so that's what we're working on today. We're going to try to get this thing started. And right now we're getting ready to run the harness through the firewall. That's why Dan's underneath the dash. And then after we get that going and the kind of the ECM mounted somewhere or figure out where we're going to tuck it, we'll give you guys an update on how we're doing all the sensor wiring. All right, guys, we are interrupting the Notch project, although we have all the harnesses ran, aside from the air conditioning one. That's what's next on the docket. So we'll bring you guys an update on that in a second. But we just want to show you that car that is here. This is like any Mustang guy's dream car, really. I mean, we're like been oogling and googling over it. Not only is it a sweet Illinois replica, but it's also got an F1 freaking Procharger on it. So it's sick. It's got a T56 Magnum. Figure I'll show you guys a little bit of it. Dan's shining her up. We're getting ready to do some real basic maintenance on it. You can see the spark plug wire doesn't match. That one burned through. That was a temporary one. So we got a new set of wires going on it. Alternator wire broke, and it's really insufficient in size. So we're going to redo the alternator charge wire. And that's pretty much the majority of what we're going to do.
Make sure the level's all good.
And then, yeah, make sure need some fresh coolant, distilled water, and then make sure it'll idle all day without getting hot, which seems to be difficult with all this stuff in front of the radiator. So the fans could be a little bit inadequate, but they should work. So we'll make sure both fans are coming on. We'll make sure that it stays cool. And then we're not really going to drive it due to the value and awesomeness of it. So we're really just going to kind of make sure it idles for a long time. We'll drive around the parking lot, but that's about the extent that we're going to see on that. But once we do get it outside, we'll give you guys a walk around on it, show you how sick it looks, and that'll be a wrap. So a quick project, and then we'll get back to the notch. All right, guys, so we finished up the GT500. We're testing it now. Alright, so we're going to get the cooling system burped on this thing, close it all up, and then we'll take it out in the sun, give you guys some good pictures and a video of it. But she's pretty much all done. We adjusted the e-brake cables because the emergency brake didn't work that well. We did the new spark plug wires with heat protective boots. We had filled and bleeded the coolant system with a coolant flush. It did not have distilled water in it before, so it was starting to rust. The water that came out of it was really yellow looking, so we just redid it all with all new fluids. And that's pretty much the gist of it. We found some issues with it underneath that we didn't show you guys. There's a handful of things that we would like to see changed. So we'll have to see when we can get it back in for that stuff, because it's nothing that we're going to be able to accomplish in a short amount of time. So anyway, hope you guys like it. Let's do a little bit of walk around footage on it. And in a twist of the story, we will no longer be ending this video anyway like you guys expected, with either the notch running or a fix for the Eleanor or an update on anything that's going on. We are cutting this video short for a couple reasons. One, it's a good spot to stop. It's the weekend. It's a Memorial Day weekend, so I hope you guys get out, or it's Labor Day weekend, I'm sorry. Hope you guys get out, enjoy the extra day off of work. We will be back here hustling once again, but if you are not, or you get a paid day off, enjoy that, because those are rare. So to finish this up, we have a couple things I want to bring to you guys' attention, and then we will wrap up this video. The notch, Dan is doing a freaking killer job on the wiring on this thing. All the power, all the tack, all the little nuanced stuff that adds up to a lot of time is ran and done. It needs terminal ends at the battery. It needs the interior put back together on the driver's side. It needs the seats bolted in, and we're going to be firing that thing up. We got tailpipes on it. We need some hardware for it, but everybody loves an LX with some tailpipes, so that's what it got. And that's going to be wrapped up next week. You guys will see a video on that. We wanted to get it done this week, but we just have more time wrapped up and making sure the wiring and the engine bay looks clean. So, and we are still waiting on sensors technically, even though we were able to source some at ASSC. Thank you, Larry at ASSC, for lending us a couple sensors to use. But let's move on to the Eleanor car, because this is going to be kind of an iconic build for the shop. Now, obviously, we did not build this car. And the people who did build it originally may or may not still be in business for reasons that will be obvious the next time this car is here. So what I do want to show you or tell you guys is that we brought it here because it was overheating. If you watched the last video, you guys will see that I burned my arm, my entire forearm on my right side. That was because I was bleeding off this radiator cap. It sounded like it stopped, and I opened it the rest of the way, and it just blew all over the place and burned me. So that was a fun. We have a history together. I'm not the only Nick that has a history with the Eleanor. So anyway, this was. That was kind of the breaking point for working on this remotely. It's already been on a couple other shops in its life. It's been on a long-term project build, and the motor's been gone through twice with like no miles on it. So now we started researching the overheating problem. It burns oil, it smokes out of the exhaust really bad, and ultimately, unfortunately, led to the removal of the 427 that was in it. So it's a dart block 427 with an F1 Procharger. It's really down on power in our opinion, and it burns a ton of oil. A lot of the wiring in the engine bay is garbage for the caliber of car that this is. A lot of the suspension work in the back is really shoddy, so we got to be addressing that. There's a lot of things on here that we're going to take care of and make sure that they can finally get in it and drive it. Obviously, on any project that any shop sees, and this is something to take as a grain of salt when you're watching our videos, admittedly as well. We could take a car that somebody just built and give our opinion on it, and it might not align with who built it. That doesn't mean that they're wrong and we're right, or we're wrong and they're right. It's just simply a matter of opinion. Building cars to this caliber and doing what we do every day is a matter of opinion. There is obviously factual evidence that some things work better than others, but there's a lot of opinion in this industry, and there's a lot of shortcuts in this industry. So we pride ourselves on making the most fact-based decisions when building your car for you. And we obviously want things to look clean, and we want to make sure that you're getting what you pay for. So there's a lot that goes into making decisions, which is why Dan and I go back and forth on so many different topics, because we want the best opinion of two creative minds. So, circling back to the Shelby, this is not built that way. This was semi-hodgepodge together on a lot of products. Just like throw catalogs at it until it's awesome. And it is awesome, and it looks awesome, and the bodywork is great, but the mechanics of it and some of the finishing work and the wiring are all nuances that we need to address now that we're getting involved with it. We don't want this family to keep jumping around shop to shop, having headaches and issues. We want them to come here, get it fixed right, drive it and enjoy it, not have any problems, and then bring another one back to us. That's how we address every car that comes here. So the Eleanor's motor's out. It's in pieces. We have all the parts boxed up and in storage upstairs. And the car being valuable and being what it is, it's not going to stay here. It's going to take us about a month to get the engine broken down, bring it to MJE, have him go through it, make sure that it's mint, and then we're going to mock up a serpentine belt setup. It does not need to be cog driven and should not be cog driven, assuming that because it has a T56 Magnum. Really unnecessary, and the belt slip is what saves more broken parts. So we're going to switch it to a serpentine setup, which is going to require custom pulley, I'm sure, from ASP, and a handful of other things that we want to make sure that they can hop in this thing, drive it wherever they want. So the 67 will be back. I'm not going to call it its movie name, because obviously if you are avid YouTube watcher, you saw that somebody else, B is for Build, coined that name on all their videos, and that car disappeared and it turned into a mess. And so that's, yeah, we're not going to call it that. That's just the 67 that happens to look like a car that started in a movie with a Procharged 427. So that's that. Notch is almost done. We have Travis's road race car back here again. This is getting an oil cooler installed, real quick and simple. And then you guys will see a huge feature on this blue car. Once again, common ground or a common basis for a lot of cars that come to us is I had somebody else build it. I've had somebody work on it. I had my friend look at it. I had too many cooks put salt in the soup, and it ends up with problems. This one is a Gen 3R VMP car on Ignite 114, and the boost gauge reads 37 pounds of boost on the dyno. Now, that obviously sounds like at first like, oh my gosh, it's some crazy horsepower, and this, no, it's not. It's not. It does not make crazy horsepower like it should. The boost gauge is accurate at 37 pounds, but there is some kind of restriction in the engine that is making 37 pounds of boost. Boost is just a measurement of restriction to airflow. So you have to make enough pressure on top of the engine and in the intake manifold to make boost. And boost gives, you make horsepower, but it's also a measurement of restriction. So there's a restriction in the engine, whether it's cam timing, a rag sitting on the intercooler, there's something stupid or something very complex wrong with it. It's a full build motor. You guys will see. So subscribe for that. You'll see us troubleshoot and resolve that problem. We're really looking forward to that. We like trouble projects when they show up. And last thing I'm going to say, and then I hope you guys just smash the subscribe button to see everything that we're talking about, is that our shop looks freaking sick right now.
A lot of color.
It is, yeah. We've got torch red, 03, grabber blue, gotta have it green, 67 silver is sick, and white notch. I mean, these are just like all fucking badass cars. We have a pretty badass job right now. All right, we'll see you guys in the next video. Subscribe down below. Sorry we cut you short, and we'll talk to you the next time.